The Islamic Approach to Dispute Resolution, a conversation with Larry Anthony of IAMS. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Prilby. Welcome back to LMI Podcast, Lawyers, Mediators International. And today we have a special guest, Larry Anthony from IAMS. And it's a mediation office that is global, international, that focuses on servicing people in the Islamic community. And so Larry, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Mac?
Yes, good. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's good to have your perspective on some of the things we're going to talk about this morning. It's a Saturday morning, May 10th. You know, back in the day, I used to not give the date and time, but now I can because I get these videos out so quickly now.
Right.
So if you're watching this, hopefully it's right after early May. And so, Larry, welcome back to the show. You're not a stranger because you've actually were on the podcast recently. And I'll share my screen to kind of let people know how this was you, me, and another mediator, Greg Adams. Greg Abrams, out in Chicago, Illinois, just 3 weeks ago. And this was at the annual American Bar Association dispute resolution section. And so you were coming on to just share some of your thoughts and takeaways from the conference. So it was good to see you then and to just get caught up. But since then, you know, you and I had spoken, and I understood that you are a mediator at IAMS, the Islamic Arbitration and Mediation Services.
Right.
And so it's a mediation office that's a little different from some of the mediation offices that are here in Texas. You are out near the Dallas area in Plano, where you guys are headquartered.
Right.
But your services, everything's listed on the website. And I'll have you speak a little bit more about what you do. But we also want to educate people with the content that you're about to share, you know, today. And so it's great to have you on. And we'll get started with this topic about the Islamic traditions in mediation. But let's start off with who you are first. And please just go ahead and give us a little bit of background on who Larry Anthony is.
Sure. I'll do my best. I'll do my best without getting into the weeds too much.
Sure.
I'm a two-time veteran. I served in the Iraq War. I'm a convert to the faith. Became Muslim in May of 2002, which was 8 months after September 11th. So that's going on 22 years now. And so I've been heavily active in the community. I went to law school back in 2014. I've completed in 2018. Of course, before that, did my undergrad at Southern Methodist University, SMU.
Yeah.
And so I got into, after I completed law school, was trying to find my niche, what I wanted to do. Decided that being a bar attorney was not my cup of tea. So I decided ADR was more of my fashion and exactly how I wanted to not only practice law in that sense, for lack of a better word, but also engage in try and help my community as well. So myself and one of the local religious leaders in the North Texas area, his name's Nadeem Bashir. He's Imam Nadeem Bashir. He's the imam, religious leader at one of the largest mosques here in North Texas. So he came and approached to me, and he had the same idea, and we decided to collaborate together and do it and work to try and facilitate the disputes that the community was facing, because everybody was just lidding up, lawyering up, getting everything in litigation, and it was not necessarily, in compliance with how we normally handle things in our faith. Is that we are encouraged to do things and handle things in a more peaceful manner instead of taking everything to court. And not everything, that happens in the courtroom in regards to disputes is not necessarily compliant with how we do things in our faith. So we felt that the ADR was the best, of course, is the best way forward to have that done in. So, because you can, just like with any other faith-based community, with such as the Jewish community and their and how they approach ADR, and there's actually some evangelical and Catholic communities that also use ADR in that sense as well. So we're not doing we didn't tool anything that was new. We use the same approach that's already in play. So we just implemented that structure, which thankfully has been very successful, and we've helped out quite a few people in regards to having our disputes. Unbeknownst to us, we've literally created a brand. We knew how we've been marketing ourselves fairly well. We've been handling slowly but surely. We started to handle cases from Illinois, from California, from New Jersey, from Florida. So we started getting cases from across the country because there's just not been an outlet or a function or anything that's been done successfully in regards to that. So we started getting and as far as like anything else, as far as word of mouth came, then we started getting a lot more referrals, and we started, of course, letting people know who we are. We've visited other religious leaders, not only in this community, but we've went to conferences in Chicago and California and so on, and even Toronto, Canada, to let people know who we are. And of course, when you're at those type of venues, people from all over the place come to those things. So those ideas and your name spreads fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And while I was visiting in the Emirates, in the Emirate of Dubai, and I actually stumbled across another mediator because ADR is real big across the world, not just here in the United States. And they were very fascinated with what we were doing and wanted to latch onto that as well. And we started collaborating with them. And so we've kind of, opened up a kind of a branch in that region as well. We're still working on marketing and getting that going, but at least we're starting to have a footprint over in the Emirates as well. But our goal is to be able to reach as many people across the globe as we can. Actually, I got a call from somebody in Uganda that wants me to join on a panel in regards to how to operate. What's the using Islamic dispute resolution in jurisdictions that are non-Islamic. So that's actually a thing I'm working with. It's a mediator, arbitrator, and attorney in Uganda. She's holding a panel in conjunction with the Secretary General of the OIC, which is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the second largest body after the UN, where the Muslim countries have united to form their kind of own cooperation in that regards as far as global reach. So that's starting to work out. So they were very interested in what we're doing. They actually told me that there's nothing like this that exists anywhere else on how we do things, because the deal is that we want to be able to marry the Islamic principles that we follow in our faith and operate that within in a legal construct with whatever regional law that we're operating in. So whether it is here in the United States, particularly with certain states, whether it's Texas, Florida, New Jersey, California, just as I said before, or regional laws such as operating in the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, or in the other areas in the Middle East. And of course, we want to, as I said earlier, is to be in other areas, whether it's Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, anywhere else that is real big on ADR, and it's spreading. To me, in my opinion, is the wave of the 21st century, and it is the future of how we are going to solve disputes going forward. To be honest, I always tease my lawyer friends, is like, my sole purpose in life is to put y'all out of business. But there is a need for attorneys, because litigation has to happen, and some things have to be taken that cannot be resolved in whether it's arbitration or mediation. It has to be in front of a judge. But for the most part, like 99.99% of the time, courts prefer to have most cases handled in such a way. I'm also currently working on my certification with the chapter of international arbitrators, which is the CARB, which is based out of London, and it's got a very global reach and are very well known in that regard. So I'm working on that certification as well as some other ones that me and my business partner do in order to effectively have that global reach that we're attaining. So that's kind of where we're at. We're very young as far as a practice. We've been doing this, even though I kind of had this idea and started putting it together 5 years ago. We've only been really doing this for the last 2 years. So we're still fairly new. But despite the fact that the short amount of time that we've been put in play, our reach has been exponential, to be honest with you. And was not my original intent, but things happen outside of that. Sometimes things are meant to be, and it takes its own shape, right? So I'm just trying to get ahead of it before it gets ahead of me. So
Gotcha.
it's we're doing. I think we're doing fairly well. With everything else, you have your bumps and bruises as far as getting something together, and you make your mistakes and you learn your lessons and you move forward and trying to be bigger, and you try to be better at what you do.
Yeah.
So that's currently where we're at. It's really about, at this point, it's educating people about who we are. Not only are we reaching out to our faith community across the globe, literally, but letting other people know that may not be associated with our faith, but may be associated with other people that they work with that may be from our faith tradition, other
Mm.
Muslims. They have shown an interest in what we're doing, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. So that's kind of where we're
Well,
heading at.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. That was a lot of information, and I appreciate you pivoting over to education as well. So not only are you educating people about what you do, but you're also you're a peacemaker at heart, right? Would you agree with me?
That's right. That's what I attempt to. I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I'm trying to be, but every once in a while, you have those clients that, for whatever you have to.
yeah,
We deal with a lot of different cultures, and so there's some cultural sensitivities, and
yeah,
so I have to, but then I have to tone down my lawyer side wants to come out, and you just want to be frank and to the
yeah.
point. That's where my business partner comes in. Is he's born and raised here in Arlington, Texas,
Okay.
but his family are Pakistani immigrants, so he understands that cultural sensitivity part of it. And
Mm,
where I fail or I don't necessarily rise to that, he's able to take on. So him and I we co-mediate a lot, which is a new trend in ADR.
mm,
We try, and I work with that not just only with him, but we've also got an attorney that we work with who's a mediator in Illinois and Chicago. Her name is Kinza Khan. She works with us as well as a contractor, and so she's also familiar with what we call the Desi culture, the Indian subcontinent, which includes Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So she understands that dynamic. She's a licensed attorney there as well, and so we work with her.
yeah,
We all co-mediate. So I handle my own cases outside of
mhm.
IAMS myself, but for the most part, this is kind of like this is the model.
Yeah, I did notice you have quite a few other consultants as
Yeah,
part of your team.
we have our consultants that we consult with in regards to certain nuances that we need issues, and they do refer cases to us as well. So we have our religious consultants as well as our legal consultants.
Gotcha.
And our legal consultants are multi-barred and are not just barred in Texas. They have other bars that they have, whether it's New York, Louisiana, or Illinois. So we have that type of reach, and the religious consultants that we have are across the country and are notable within our community and are aware of contemporary issues and how to resolve those. Because we have a very rich historical faith community that goes back 1,300 years. This also has a legal precedence, believe it or not, that goes back that far as well. So
Yeah.
we're able to dig what we call the classical texts, and we have our contemporary issues. And me and myself and Imam Nadim Bashir have an issue that we're not familiar with in regards to nuance, we get them on the phone and we talk to them. We may not, of course, we don't mention party names, but we talk about the issues.
Yeah.
And so this is where we're hitting a roadblock on what's the best way to approach this issue.
Yeah.
And that just not necessarily goes with the religious part, that also goes with the legal part. How do we navigate that, and what's the best way to approach that to ensure that we are compliant legally as well, because we want to make everything we do in regards to our mediated settlement agreements or arbitration awards, we want to ensure that they are compliant, and that way they would be legally binding.
Go ahead. So, what makes, I guess, Islamic type of mediations different from mediations that I might be familiar with that many people who were even at the ABA conference used
Mhm.
to? What would set, I guess, Islamic mediation apart from what you would
Right.
typically see?
That's a good question. Fairly simple. The some of the issues, to be honest with you, there is a lot of people think of the boogeyman in regards to Islamic law, but that's not necessarily true. There is a lot of overlap in regards to state law and some Islamic principles.
Yes.
In regards to business matters and contracts, they're almost identical. There may be a couple of finer nuances, but for the most part, we still have breach of fiduciary duty. We have what makes a contract to offer acceptance, and
Except,
so on and
mhm.
so forth. These things are actually, to be honest with you, are historically are Islamic principles that the West adopted during its foundation in regards to the canonization of its own jurisprudence. There's actually an interesting article that was written back in the early 2000s called The Islamic Origins of Common Law. They're not based in the Greek law as people think they are in regards to jury trial and contract formation. These actually go back to Islamic principles, and the founding fathers were very influenced with how the Ottoman Empire was handling things legally. And so during the Enlightenment period, our founding fathers adapted these into their approaches to law, as well as that they found to them to be more conducive than the English law that they were dealing with. So that's an interesting article. I can actually share that with you later.
Yeah,
You can find the
we
PDF
can.
online.
I do got a blog post about every episode that I do, and so whatever you have to submit to me, I can
Yeah,
definitely
okay,
put links
perfect.
on the bottom of it.
So the nuances come in regards to family law to some degree, because there's an issue. There's a issue of common in regards to community property in regards to divorces that's a little bit different from Islamic, uh, how that the Islamic principles of divorce, how that occurs. Now, it's very interesting. Even in that, there is some overlap historically, because in the Judeo, maybe not with the Judeo faith, but the Jewish faith, but with the Christian faith, uh, before the Protestant. I know where I'm getting the history, but it's important to understand, because
Yeah.
people don't understand the
Yeah,
overlap.
well, that's what we're talking about today. We're
Yeah,
talking
for the
about these
Catholic
little
Church,
nuances that people not be familiar with. Go ahead.
exactly. With the Catholic Church, the idea of divorce is almost forbidden. You only get divorced in regards to mostly like infidelity or other parts, but for the most part, Catholicism has a very strict, used to back in the day, had a very strict view on divorce, to where it was almost impermissible. You'd have to get the authority of the permission from the Pope to issue a divorce. But of course, that's changed since then. But so the idea of community property didn't exist. So the idea is in the Catholic Church, because the divorce didn't really exist. So the idea is, how did that come into Western legal system? Well, to be honest with you, that goes all the way back to when Spain was, governed by the Muslim majority at the part of the Muslim Empire at the time for 800 years. Community property actually came in through the Islamic Empire in what is called, it was Al Andalus at the time, but modern day Spain and Portugal. So at that time, back in the what we would call the Middle Ages, which was around the 8th, 9th, 10th century, the caliph at the time was noticing, and the scholars noticed at the time, that the men were just divorcing their women left and right, and kind of like upgrading to younger models, right? They were wanting younger women, and these women that they were divorcing were being left destitute with nothing to get by on. So the caliph, which is the religious leader, put a stop to that and said, when there's a divorce, he instituted this idea of community property, that she gets a stake of what he has gathered financially during the marriage, and he has to give her a portion of his income in order to ensure that she's not left destitute. Now, the idea of community property here in the United States, which is only like with 8 or 9 states, but there's some form of division of property in that regards. They may not have the complete communal property. Here in Texas, there's communal property, which means it's called the just and right division of community property, but sometimes it's 50-50, but sometimes the percentage is not exactly that. You're very familiar with
Yeah.
that. You operate out of Houston.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily take that approach, but that doesn't mean that there's not spousal maintenance and there's not a division of assets, because everything has to be weighed. And just like the factors that would be weighed in Texas in regards to division of property are the same things that are actually implemented within the Islamic tradition as well. So we looked at factors such as how long have they been married, what's her education status, what's her work status been like, was she a stay-home mom, stay-home wife during that period, did she forgo her education, what's the level of income for him, if she was working, what was her level of income during that period, what were they able to accrue, during that time. And then we have them negotiate. We tell them this is how that would look, but of course this is up for negotiation, because in the end it is an agreement that you two reach,
Yeah.
because that's the whole purpose of mediation. So we give that power back to them, and so in that sense they come up with some kind of formula that works in regards. And if they want to do things 50-50, they're completely allowed to. But the problem is when it becomes adversarial and they want to take it to court and they say, oh, I want 50-50. Well, that's not necessarily allowed in our faith, because of the injustice that comes along with it, because sometimes the courts don't take everything into consideration, and it can be unfortunately very disproportional in regards to the allocation of those assets and so on and so forth. And someone can be
Mhm.
really put on um, kind of like a survival mode at that point. Because I've seen husbands that have been have been stripped of their custody of their children for whatever reason, and it may not have been justified. It's
Mhm.
just people unfortunately use divorce as a tool for revenge
Mhm.
in order to get. And to be honest with you, you should be. Some attorney, there's good attorneys and there's bad attorneys, but unfortunately, I've seen a lot more bad attorneys than I've seen good attorneys. That's why I limit myself to only a handful. But what I'm saying is that attorneys are about fully advocating for their client,
Yeah.
and sometimes and about, to be honest with you, racking up their fees. So they'll do whatever they can in order to bleed the other side, so to say. And I'm sure you've seen that as
Yeah,
well.
well, that's part of the litigation, right? And one of the
Yeah,
benefits of
that's the
going to
problem with litigation,
mediation and what you do is to keep the
right?
costs down and put the money
And
back in
make
the
it more
party's
and try and
pocket.
be more favorable to both parties instead of being a completely one sided.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's how the nuances are usually.
so let me ask you, continuing on the difference when it comes to family mediations, when you were talking about property, really, but what about possession and access? How is that different in the Islamic approach of mediation
With the
versus what?
children,
Correct.
okay, there's not much difference. As young children should be with their mother
Mm,
because they're formidable and they're growing up, and when they come to the age of what I call the age of discernment, where they understand more about more right and wrong and able to choose. Of course, the courts say that by age of 12 they'll take their consideration in regards to the children's preference in regards to who they want to be with. But when they become a little bit more older, they should have equal time with dad, just as should they have equal time with mom. Um, there's this idea within the community, and which is uh, not necessarily correct. It's a misunderstanding, but the contemporary issues we deal with are so they're a little bit more nuanced. Is that the this idea that the custody of the children would go to the men upon divorce, and that's not necessarily correct. It's
mm,
a misunderstanding of the nuances within Islamic family law and how that works. That's not the case. Young children should be staying with their mother
mm.
for those are very formidable ages until they get to the age of understanding, like I said, discernment. And then they should have some equal time with dad, but they should never be taken away from mom, unless, of course, like in the courts, there's a reason, there's a problem with mom. She's
Abuse.
abusive, she's
Mm,
an addict, she's got issues. Then, of course, that goes with both sides. The other parent may be unfit to have primary custody of the children. But I've dealt with issues where in 50-50 here in the in Texas, as well as other parts of the country, is
mm.
becoming
Very
you
popular.
know it's
Yeah.
exactly very popular, and courts are starting to lean to that idea. Uh, is that couples are starting to agree to having more of a 50-50 approach in regards to custody of the children. I have written agreements with that in mind. So that usually how that goes too. So it's very, again, there's a lot of overlap in that, and it's really what the parties can agree to. By default, and we always tell them, like, going, look, if y'all cannot come to an agreement, we have to deep because there's this principle within what we call major arching principles and maxims within Islamic jurisprudence, is that taking care of the children is a primary is a responsibility. So we always tell them, look, where Islamic law may be silent on that, we default to what is the custom of where we are living, because there's not there's not necessarily something concrete, and there's a misunderstanding that people have in regards to certain nuances within the faith. In
Yeah.
regards to that approach, we always say we default. If y'all are unable to come with an agreement, we're going to default to what Texas state law says in regards to possession and custody, and such.
I
And
see.
child support, we all there's not we default to what the state says in regards to
Yeah.
support.
Well, thank you. I was going to ask you about that. Is there a difference in child support?
No, it's just, the law is in regards to our faith. The Islamic law is silent on child support, but it is stated that it is responsibility of the father to take care of his children,
Okay.
100%. Unless they parties can, unless the of course the ex-wife, the mother, is able to contribute financially, but it is not her responsibility unless she wants to. And we consider that a charity on her end if she wishes to do so, but it is completely 100% falls in the hands of the father to take care of his children
Interesting.
until they
So,
reach the age of puberty or take care of themselves, right?
Okay, so I've done some divorces for parties over the years where one party was Muslim and the other
Mm,
parent was not. And so those are they can get kind of interesting because, for example, when we get to the possession schedule over children, we might put some specific Muslim, holy days onto the
right.
possession schedule to address that. I
Mhm.
remember 1 years ago I did one where it was really important. I think mom was Catholic, dad was Muslim, and we ended up, putting some of those terms, for his benefit into it, and mom was cool with it. But I wonder, do you sometimes deal with, I guess, the um, multi-religious uh, perspectives
I
of
have
two
not.
party?
I have not dealt with. I have not dealt with that. Where one party is not Muslim and the other one is. I have not had any case like that.
Okay, okay,
They're very rare. They're very rare. That's not the majority. Most people marry amongst themselves in regards to their faith tradition. You'll find it every now and then,
yeah,
but it's very rare.
got it. Okay, so tell me a little bit about, I guess a synergy between the faith tradition and
Hmm.
the local laws, right? Like there, it's not a us versus them kind of thing, right?
No, not
It's
at all.
like, is there a kind of a reconciliation that you try to do, or what if there's a conflict in between what the law says, in the state you live in, and what the
Mhm.
faith tradition might say? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, again, like I said, there's a lot of overlap. There's not. They're not. There's this notion that Islamic
Yeah.
jurisprudence and state law are adversarial to one another. That's not true at all.
Okay.
Um, and we can. It's easy for us to have some kind of reconciliation when the parties come to us. They want to have things done within their faith tradition, to have things done resolved in their faith tradition.
Hmm.
Um, we always tell them, like, if we're unable to come to an agreement, I said, look, we can throw this all out and you can go into litigation, but you know that's how that's going to play out. Uh, and you can, and she can come after 50-50. That might not be necessarily, it's not just in that sense. You can do so because there's no court, Islamic court here. That doesn't exist. I just want to make sure that's clear. There's no such thing as an Islamic court here, and no one is trying to institute one. That
Yeah.
would be, kind of a shadow court, being adversarial to the court system here in this country. That's not what we're doing. That's not what's happening. But we just tell them, you don't have to come to an agreement. You're not obligated to do so, but I just want to let you know the reality of what you're going to have to face if you do this. Do take this in trial, which lawyer up. Time is going to take a couple of years, especially if there's children involved. You're going to spend a lot of money, and then you're going to get an agree. Then you're going to have some kind of order that you may or may not be happy with from the judge, and they're not going to care about Islam. They're going to go, we're going to do things according to Texas state law, whatever law, and this is how we do things in regards to the division. Right or wrong in regards to how that approach is, it's best that we settle now. We're able to come to an agreement now. So just tying that into the synergy, we do tell them, for the most part, there's, people want to have things done according to their faith tradition, but there's, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most of the people I speak with and the scholars that I talk to and the legal consultants that I have, there's not this adversarial notion that Islamic law is completely opposed to Western notions of law. That's not
Yeah.
true. Again, as I've said, there's a lot of overlap. So because of there's overlap, that gives us a lot of flexibility on how to resolve these issues. To be honest,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
so
Well,
the
it's all
synergy,
about.
the synergy is there, but because as I said, that the overlap is there.
I understand. Yeah, so it's really all about resolving conflicts, however it comes to you.
Mhm.
And you use faith traditions, but you also use the law as appropriate to get people to resolve their differences. And I'll take it, tell me if I'm wrong, that the agreement that you draft, for the parties and that they all sign off on is going to be just a regular binding MSA, mediated settlement agreement that would then be able to be enforced in a court of law.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. And you're, even though you're based in North Texas, are you handling mediations for people all over,
Yes.
like parties who might live in, I don't know, Indiana,
Yeah.
and
Of
they
course. Yes, we
hear
have.
about you? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. We just make sure that our agreements are legally binding, have the correct language in there in regards to whatever the state laws say.
got it.
We
Okay,
ensure that the language is there.
okay. And finally, let's start wrapping up with. I know you're global. You're opening an office in Dubai. I mean, good luck, to you on that.
Okay.
And if people want to reach you and they want to, follow up and start moving forward with you, um, I'm always kind of curious how, like, do you find that both parties to a contest or a dispute come to you simultaneously, or is it one party comes to you and then the other and invites the other side? How do they both end up, working with you guys?
Well, we always encourage people. I'm sure you do. Is that both parties are already in agreement to have it
Yeah.
handled and then come to us.
Hmm.
That's the easier approach. But of course, I do deal with where one party comes to us first, and then
Yeah.
they ask us to reach out. Now that's not always conducive because there's like going, no, I'm not dealing with that. Sometimes it works out. It's a little bit more work on our end, and I always tell them it's best that they try and talk to the
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
spouse or the other party to try and do that. Um, because like I said, it puts a lot more, work on our end where we can concentrate on other things. But we're here to help. But we do get both. More than less, it's usually we get one side. It's unilateral. Sometimes it's unilateral on their end, and then they come to us, and then we have to reach out and ask them if they want to come to the table. Sometimes it's yes, but sometimes for the most part it's no. Sometimes we're able to convince them, and sometimes we can't. And so, okay, it is what it is, and they
Yeah.
have to move on, and they have to deal with their dilemma.
Yeah.
But again, we're here to help. Yeah.
Got it. Well, for a two-year organization, you guys have done a lot. You've touched thousands. I'm assuming thousands of people's lives, in this very short period of time. And so, best of
Yeah.
luck to you. Again,
Appreciate it.
I'll leave the screen share on. Larry, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the
So,
LMI podcast today.
thank
Uh,
you so much for having me.
yes, certainly. Anytime we can educate folks out there on services that might be available, want to do it. So don't be a stranger. You're always welcome back.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
until next time, everybody, LMI podcast. Check out this video and all the other ones. This will be spread throughout our social media account. But thank you so much for the talk today.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. And then the best way to get in contact with you is to go to IAMS.LLC. That's
Yes.
IAMS.LLC in case people are listening and not watching the video.
Right.
All right,
Perfect. Thanks.
guys. Till next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.